The slap rang out in the boardroom like a gunshot. Gasps followed, whispers slicing through the silence, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. My boss's handprint burned across my cheek, and with it, the last of my dignity. In that moment, I thought I had reached the lowest point of my life. Overlooked, humiliated, powerless. But I was wrong, because that was the day I met him. Damon Blackthorne, a man who walked into Crescent Industries not as a consultant, but as a force of nature. His gaze found me, sharp, magnetic, impossible. And something ancient stirred deep within me. It wasn't attraction. It was recognition. That moment shattered everything I thought I knew, about my career, about my life, about myself. I wasn't just a woman fighting to prove her worth in the corporate jungle. I was something else. Something waiting to awaken. And Damon? He wasn't just a man. He was a wolf, an alpha. My destiny. I didn't know it then, but the humiliation that almost broke me was the spark that would change everything. Forever. The fluorescent lights of Crescent Industries' 15th floor flickered faintly, casting a sterile glow across the sea of cubicles. Chen's fingers flew across her keyboard, each keystroke a desperate attempt to maintain control in a world that seemed designed to undermine her. Her meticulous financial report for the Morrison account was complete, triple-checked, and flawless, or so she believed. Then Victoria Kane's voice shattered the office's tense quiet like a whip. "Chen, my office. Now." Heads turned. Eyes flicked toward Maya, some sympathetic, some wary, all aware of what this summons usually meant. Her stomach twisted into knots as she saved her work with trembling fingers, forcing herself to walk through the office toward Victoria's corner office. Each step felt heavier than the last, the polished floors reflecting the dread that clung to her like a shadow. Victoria sat behind her mahogany desk, perfectly poised in a black tailored suit. Her hair, meticulously styled, framed a face that could cut sharper than any knife. Fingers drummed impatiently on the desk as she finally looked up, her dark eyes narrowing. "Close the door," she commanded, her voice icy, leaving no room for hesitation. Maya obeyed, the click of the office door sounding like a guillotine's fall. "You've made 17 errors in the Morrison account," Victoria said, voice sharp, sliding the marked-up reports across the desk. The red ink burned across the white pages like fire. Maya's heart dropped. 17 errors? She had triple-checked every formula, every projection, every assumption. "Director Kane, I reviewed those numbers carefully." "Carefully isn't enough," Victoria interrupted, leaning forward. Her sharp gaze bored into Maya's chest as if trying to extract her very soul. "Perhaps you'd like to explain to Mr. Morrison himself why his investment projections are flawed." Maya swallowed the lump forming in her throat. She wanted to protest, to argue that her work had been correct, but she knew that any challenge would be career suicide. I'll correct them immediately," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Victoria's lips curled into a smile sharp as broken glass. "You'll redo the entire presentation from scratch, 27 slides, tonight, and it better be flawless." The words felt like a sentence handed down from a court with no mercy. Maya nodded, clutching the red-marked pages to her chest as she left the office, ignoring the glances of her co-workers who had learned to look away. Back at her cubicle, she opened her laptop, hands trembling. Hours passed in a blur of numbers, formulas, and coffee. Exhaustion pressed against her chest, but she pushed on, fueled by the fear of failure and the faint hope that tonight at least she could prove herself. The office had emptied, leaving only the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional echo of a cleaning crew. Maya's fingers froze on the keyboard as the door to the boardroom creaked open. He stepped in. Damon Blackthorne. She had only seen him once before, briefly, during an earlier meeting with Blackthorne Enterprises, but his presence was impossible to ignore. tall, broad-shouldered, with storm-gray eyes that seemed to catalog everything and everyone in the room. He carried the kind of intensity that made the air feel heavier. Even seated, even silent, he radiated authority and something more primal. Maya's heart thudded, not just from fatigue, but from an instinct she couldn't explain. It was a pull, deep and unsettling, like a thread winding its way through her chest and tugging at her very core. Damon's gaze met hers for a fraction of a second, and it felt longer, electric. Something awakened in her, subtle at first. Awareness of the tiniest sounds, the faintest movements. Her pulse raced, senses sharpening in ways that made no logical sense. She blinked, trying to shake it off, telling herself it was exhaustion. Victoria swept into the room shortly after, her high heels clicking against the polished floor. She launched into the presentation with practiced precision, using slides Maya herself had painstakingly rebuilt overnight. But Maya couldn't focus entirely on the numbers. Her attention kept flicking to Damon, how he leaned slightly forward in his chair, how his eyes seemed to track her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. When the discussion turned to the risk assessment, Damon's voice cut through Victoria's narrative. "Ms. Chen, would you walk us through your methodology for these projections?" The room went silent. Maya's pulse doubled. This was unexpected, unplanned. Any misstep would make her look incompetent. But the pull in her chest urged her forward. "I'd be happy to explain," she said, rising from her chair. Her voice was steadier than she expected. The eyes of every board member were on her now, but Damon's gaze anchored her. For the next 10 minutes, she presented her work with clarity and precision, answering questions, defending assumptions, and walking the tightrope between competence and corporate politics. All the while, Damon watched, silent but perceptive, and Maya felt it. Something undeniable, electric, like recognition, though she didn't yet understand its meaning. Victoria's smile remained polite, but it didn't reach her eyes. She leaned back, calculating, as if preparing her next strike. Maya noticed it, and couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. For now, at least, she had reclaimed her competence in front of the board. The meeting ended. Applause from the board members was polite but perfunctory. Damon lingered at the back of the room, his gaze lingering on Maya for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Then, as quietly as he had arrived, he was gone. Maya sat back in her chair, heart still racing, senses still tingling. She felt as though something had shifted, something beyond the corporate world, beyond humiliation, beyond even fear. She didn't understand it yet, couldn't name it, but she knew her life had already begun to change, and she was powerless to resist the pull.
The office was quieter the next morning, yet the tension from yesterday's confrontation lingered like a shadow. Maya Chen sat at her cubicle, her freshly rebuilt Morrison account presentation loaded on the shared drive, every chart and calculation meticulously checked once more. Her hands trembled, not from exhaustion this time, but from the faint pulse of awareness she couldn't explain. Damon Blackthorne's presence from yesterday still haunted her senses. She couldn't stop thinking about the way his storm-gray eyes had locked onto hers, the way her instincts had flared in response, like an echo buried deep in her mind. She dismissed it with a shaky breath. She had work to do, presentations to deliver, and a corporate battlefield to survive. Her cubicle neighbor, Clara, peeked over the divider. "You okay? You look different." Maya forced a smile. "Just tired. Stayed up late finishing the slides." Clara gave a knowing glance. "That Victoria Kane never quits, does she?" Maya only nodded. Victoria's manipulation had become predictable, a storm she could neither avoid nor control, except by outworking everyone else. Today, however, she had to prove her work in front of the board again, with Damon lurking somewhere in the background, unannounced but impossible to ignore. The conference room doors opened, and Victoria swept in like a predator. Every step echoed confidence, every glance calculated to intimidate. She gestured at Maya to begin. Maya took a deep breath and launched into the presentation. Her voice was steady, clear, and precise. She moved through her slides as if she were walking a tightrope suspended over a pit of judgment. Numbers, projections, and analyses spilled forth effortlessly, but she couldn't stop noticing subtle things that felt off. Shadows seemed sharper, noises more distinct. Even the scent of coffee lingered in the air longer than it should. Her instincts prickled, faint but insistent, whenever Damon's presence, even just the memory, crossed her mind. Something about him unsettled her, but not entirely in a bad way. It was magnetic, compelling, and impossible to rationalize. Halfway through the presentation, a question came from the Blackthorne side of the table. "Ms. Chen, how did you account for potential market fluctuations in the third quarter projections?" Maya's eyes flicked to the empty seat where Damon had been yesterday. Her pulse quickened. She answered with calm precision, explaining her methodology step by step. The words came naturally, but underneath, her instincts were hyper-aware. Every creak of the floorboards, every subtle movement in the room felt amplified, as if the office itself had sharpened its senses along with hers. Victoria's expression remained neutral, though Maya felt the familiar tension radiating from her like heat. She was watching, calculating, waiting for the smallest flaw to strike. Maya ignored it, letting the numbers speak for themselves. By the end of the session, Maya had not only defended her work, but subtly asserted her competence. The board members nodded, some impressed, some cautiously polite, but none seemed able to look away from the quiet intensity she now radiated. Even without Damon physically present, she could still feel the residual pull of his attention, tugging at the corners of her consciousness. Back at her cubicle, Maya finally allowed herself a small sigh. Her heart still raced, not from fear or fatigue, but from something more primal, a quiet, nagging awareness that her world had just expanded in ways she could not yet define. And then the message arrived, a note on her laptop, sent from an internal system she rarely checked. It was short, almost cryptic. "Meet me in conference room B. Now." Her breath caught. Damon? It had to be, but why? No one else would sign a note that way. Her instincts screamed caution, but a strange, undeniable pull urged her forward. She glanced around. The office was largely empty, perfectly quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. She stood, adjusting her blazer, and walked briskly toward the room. Each step felt charged, every sound exaggerated, her heightened awareness impossible to ignore. Her mind raced with possibilities. Was it a follow-up about the presentation? A private warning? Something else entirely? The door opened silently, and Damon stepped inside. His presence filled the room like a force of nature. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just observed her, his storm-gray eyes taking in every detail of her posture, her expression, her subtle tension. "You're early," he said, his voice smooth, low, carrying a resonance that made her chest tighten. "I got your message," Maya replied, trying to steady her voice but failing slightly. Her pulse betrayed her. Damon stepped closer, just enough for her to feel the faint brush of his aura, though he kept a professional distance. "You did well yesterday," he said quietly, almost offhandedly, though the intensity behind the words suggested otherwise. "Better than I expected." Maya blinked. "Better than expected?" "Sometimes people underestimate the obvious," Damon replied, and she felt a subtle, shivering current run along her spine. His gaze didn't waver. There was something in his attention, something primal, almost predatory, that made her instincts flare. She could feel it in the subtle shift of the air, the quiet tightening of her senses. Her mind whirled. Was it just intimidation, or something else entirely? Before she could ask, a noise in the hallway, a sudden crash, a clatter of papers, made her jump. Damon reacted instantly, moving with a fluid precision she hadn't seen in any human before. He blocked her from the door, scanning the empty hall. "It's nothing," he said finally, but the smooth efficiency of his movements, the reflexes she had barely caught, made her heart pound with something she could neither name nor dismiss. Her mind raced. There was danger here, corporate, yes, but something else too. Something lurking beneath the surface, unseen, primal. Her instincts whispered warnings she didn't understand, but she could feel them deep in her chest. When she turned to speak, Damon was gone. Just like that, he had vanished from the room. Maya's breath came in shallow gasps. She stood frozen for a moment, mind spinning.
Maya returned to her desk after the strange encounter in conference room B, her mind still buzzing. Damon's presence lingered in her senses, even though he had vanished as suddenly as he appeared. The office felt smaller, louder, sharper, every sound amplified, every scent more distinct. Coffee brewing, the faint metallic tang of printer ink, the subtle perfume of her coworkers drifting across the cubicles. It was almost overwhelming. Her instincts whispered at her incessantly. Something was changing. She couldn't ignore it anymore. A subtle shiver ran down her spine when a shadow moved just beyond her peripheral vision. She turned quickly, but nothing, or no one, was there. Clara leaned over her cubicle. "You've been off since yesterday. Something happen?" Maya forced a smile. "Just tired. Long day yesterday." Clara didn't push further, sensing the quiet storm in her friend's eyes. Maya turned back to her work, but her focus was fractured, interrupted by flashes of instinct she couldn't explain. She was beginning to realize that her heightened awareness wasn't just stress. It was something deeper, something tied to Damon. A soft chime from her laptop pulled her attention to a new message. Not a corporate email, not from Victoria, just a simple note. "Meet me in the rooftop garden at 6 p.m. Alone." Her pulse quickened, a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. Damon was drawing her in, and every instinct in her body screamed both caution and desire. The message left no room for hesitation. She glanced at the clock. Plenty of time to finish her tasks. And yet every second felt like a countdown toward something she couldn't yet name. Victoria's voice cut through the office like a whip. "Chen, I need you in my office. Now." Maya's stomach sank. The juxtaposition was almost cruel. Corporate tyranny by day, supernatural intrigue by night. She straightened her blazer, forcing herself to maintain composure. Victoria's office was a familiar battlefield, and Maya had learned over time that the only defense was precision and control. "Sit," Victoria commanded, gesturing to the chair before her. The sharp click of her heels on the floor echoed like a metronome of intimidation. "You think you're showing initiative by meeting deadlines and impressing our partners?" Victoria said, voice low but venomous. "Do you even understand the stakes here? The errors you almost made yesterday could have cost this company millions." Maya swallowed. "I double-checked everything, Director Kane. There were no errors." "Silence," Victoria snapped, cutting her off. "Your excuses mean nothing. You will follow my instructions. No improvisation. No deviation." The tension in the room coiled around Maya like a steel wire. Yet beneath it, another tension simmered, her instincts prickling with awareness she couldn't explain. She was attuned to more than Victoria's manipulation. She could feel the energy shift around her, subtle vibrations in the air, the nearly imperceptible hum of something just beyond normal perception. Hours crawled by. Maya completed her tasks mechanically, eyes flicking to the clock, counting the minutes until she could slip away. Her pulse remained elevated, her senses stretched taut, when finally the day ended. She packed her bag quickly, glancing at the stairwell instead of the elevator, a decision driven by instinct she didn't yet understand. The rooftop garden was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the evening city lights. Plants swayed in the breeze, and the distant hum of traffic softened against the concrete jungle surrounding her. And there he was, Damon. He stood by the edge, hands in the pockets of his tailored coat, watching her approach. There was no smile, No greeting, just the gravity of his presence. The world seemed to contract around him, and every instinct in her screamed that she was being measured, studied. "You came," he said, voice calm, low, carrying a weight she couldn't define. Maya hesitated, the words caught in her throat. "I had to." Damon's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're aware, aren't you?" "Of what?" she asked, though a shiver ran down her spine at the intensity of his gaze. The pull, the awareness, the difference. He took a step closer, and the air seemed to thrum between them. Maya's senses sharpened, and she realized she could hear the faintest shift of the wind through the city trees, smell the faint coppery tang of the city's night air. Her pulse quickened, heartbeat echoing in her ears. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. "You're not ordinary," Damon said simply, his storm-gray eyes holding hers with unwavering focus. "And the moment I saw you, something recognized you. You felt it too, didn't you?" Maya's chest tightened. She didn't know what it was, only that her instincts had been on high alert since the first moment he had looked at her. The hairs on her arms stood on end, and an unfamiliar heat pooled in her stomach. She could feel an almost magnetic pull toward him, dangerous and exhilarating all at once. Before she could respond, a sharp noise echoed from the stairwell below, a cart knocked over, papers scattering. Her senses screamed, and without thinking, Damon moved with a speed that made her head spin, positioning himself between her and the sound. "It's fine," he said, though the precision and swiftness of his movement suggested otherwise. "You're safe." Maya's mind raced. His reaction wasn't human, or at least not entirely. The subtle reflexes, the fluidity of movement, the quiet authority, it was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. And yet she felt drawn to him, to the intensity, to the magnetism that pulsed just beneath the surface. "You have powers," she found herself whispering, the words more of a question than an accusation. Damon's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Latent," he admitted, awakened by circumstance. The rooftop garden felt smaller now, charged with something that wasn't just electricity from the city lights. Maya realized her life was no longer confined to spreadsheets, deadlines, or Victoria's cruelty. Something deeper, wilder, and far more dangerous had touched her, and she could feel it in every nerve, every heartbeat, every breath. And then Damon stepped closer, the distance closing between them in a way that made her instincts flare uncontrollably. Her chest tightened, a mixture of fear and anticipation curling through her. Before anything could be said, a sound, a distant, deliberate footstep, made both of them snap their attention toward the stairwell.
The hum of the city below the rooftop garden had a strange clarity to it now, sharper, almost tangible. Maya Chen stood frozen, senses prickling, every instinct on alert. The sound of deliberate footsteps from the stairwell sent a shiver down her spine, her heightened awareness flaring in ways she didn't fully understand. Damon's stance shifted subtly, calm, controlled, yet every muscle in his frame was poised, ready to react. The faint brush of his coat against her arm sent a ripple through her nerves, a mixture of comfort and alarm she couldn't explain. A figure emerged from the stairwell, a delivery worker, harmless in every sense, but the relief that washed over her was fleeting. Damon's eyes, storm-gray and unreadable, scanned the area with predatory precision, the subtle glow of awareness in his gaze, something she couldn't comprehend yet. "You feel it too," he said quietly, almost as if reading her thoughts. His voice carried an unspoken question, a challenge, and an acknowledgement of the strange current connecting them. Maya nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. I don't understand what's happening to me." "You're awakening," Damon said simply. "There are instincts buried deep inside you. They're stirring now." Her heartbeat quickened, a mix of exhilaration and fear curling through her. She could feel the world differently. The night air was sharper, Sense carried further. Every subtle motion around her registered like a vivid painting in her mind. Even Damon's presence was more than magnetic now. It was tangible, almost alive, pulling at something deep within her. "I feel things," she whispered, voice trembling. "Sounds, sense, even the way you move. It's like I can sense more than I should." "That's exactly it," Damon said, his voice softening. He stepped closer, but still maintained a careful distance. "You're more attuned than most humans, and the closer you are to me, the stronger it becomes. There's a connection forming, whether you realize it or not." Maya's chest tightened. The intensity of the sensation was disorienting. Her rational mind struggled to keep up, but her instincts screamed louder than reason. Something inside her had shifted, and she could no longer pretend the world was confined to spreadsheets and office politics. Suddenly, a sharp sound, metal scraping against concrete, echoed from the rooftop door. Maya's senses flared violently, her pulse racing. Damon moved with lightning speed, intercepting her before she could react, shielding her body with an effortless sweep of his arm. "Stay behind me," he commanded low and firm. Before her eyes, a shadow shifted along the rooftop edge, a presence both human and yet impossibly fast. Maya's instincts screamed at her, a primal warning that danger was near. She could feel the stranger's intent, the quiet hum of power emanating from them. It was unlike anything she'd ever sensed before. Damon's voice broke through the tension. "They won't harm you, not if I'm here. But you must trust your instincts. Let them guide you." Maya nodded, though her body felt taut, every nerve alert. For the first time, she realized that she wasn't merely afraid. She was alive in a way she had never been before. Her senses were awakening, her awareness sharpening, and she could feel a dangerous exhilaration pulsing through her veins. The figure stepped into the light. "A rival pack scout," Damon explained silently with a glance. Maya's eyes widened. The supernatural world was real, it was dangerous, and it had been brushing against her ordinary life all along, invisible yet potent. "You're stronger than you know," Damon murmured, almost to himself, but loud enough for Maya to hear. "And the longer you resist, the harder it will be to control." "What if I can't?" she asked, voice trembling. "What if I fail?" Damon's gaze softened for the briefest instant, the intensity of his storm-gray eyes giving way to something unreadable yet reassuring. "Then I'll guide you. But you must want it. You must accept it, as frightening as it is." The scout's presence vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving Maya standing in the rooftop garden, the city lights sparkling below like distant stars. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and something else entirely, a pull she couldn't ignore, a growing awareness that Damon's world was now hers too. She sank onto the bench, trying to calm herself, but the heightened awareness persisted. Every scent, every sound, every subtle movement in the garden screamed at her, refusing to let her return to ordinary life. Damon remained nearby, silent yet undeniably present, an anchor in a world that had suddenly expanded far beyond her comprehension. "You're not alone in this," he said, voice steady, carrying the weight of reassurance. "But there will be challenges, both in your world and mine, and some of them will test you in ways you've never imagined." Maya nodded, unable to speak. She felt the truth in his words, felt the stirring of instincts that were no longer dormant. Her life was shifting, irrevocably, and the realization sent a thrill of fear and anticipation through her. As she finally stood to leave the rooftop, Damon's gaze followed her, unwavering. The pull between them was undeniable now, a magnetic force that neither could ignore. She felt it in every nerve, every heartbeat, every breath, a connection that went beyond attraction, beyond understanding.
The hum of fluorescent lights in Crescent Industries felt almost deafening to Maya as she returned to her cubicle the next morning. Her senses, still heightened from the rooftop encounter, made the office feel unreal. Every whispered conversation, every distant footstep, Every faint click of a keyboard seemed amplified. She rubbed her temples, trying to ground herself, but the magnetic pull she felt toward Damon lingered like a current beneath her skin. She barely registered Victoria's sharp greeting as she passed. "Chen, make sure today's reports are flawless. Don't give anyone a reason to doubt your competence." The words were laced with venom, but Maya had learned to nod and retreat without engaging. Every interaction with Victoria felt like walking a minefield, but today, the stakes felt even higher. Something was shifting, and Maya couldn't focus solely on spreadsheets anymore. Her laptop pinged, a calendar reminder. Merger debrief after hours, attendance optional. But it wasn't from the official schedule. It was an encrypted message from Damon. "Meet me in conference room D at 7 p.m. No one else." Maya's pulse quickened. She had 1,000 questions. Why a private meeting? Why him? Why now? Her instincts screamed at her to be cautious, but another part, darker, wilder, intrigued, pulled her toward the answer. The office day dragged on, Victoria's constant scrutiny, emails piling up, and the thin hum of fluorescent lights created a pressure cooker environment. Every glance from a colleague felt magnified, every footstep in the hall echoing like a warning. Maya's mind wandered to Damon's message, replaying his storm-gray gaze, the intensity of his presence on the rooftop, the way he seemed almost aware of her in ways no human could be. Finally, the clock ticked past 6. Maya closed her laptop, her hands trembling slightly as she grabbed her coat. The office was quieting, most employees leaving her alone with her thoughts. She walked to conference room D, keys jingling in her hand. The door was slightly ajar. She pushed it open and stepped inside. Damon was there, his figure silhouetted by the faint city lights streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He didn't speak, didn't move. He simply watched her, an unreadable expression on his face, yet every instinct in her screamed at the significance of this moment. "You came," he said finally, his voice calm, commanding, low. It resonated deep in her chest, pulling her closer even as caution flared. I wanted to understand," Maya admitted, her voice steady despite the rapid thump of her heartbeat. "I need to understand what's happening to me." He stepped closer, the air between them thick with tension. "Then, you need to trust me, not just with your safety, but with yourself. You're awakening, Maya. Your senses, your instincts, they're no longer dormant. They're responding to something primal inside you. And to me." Her breath hitched. The words carried weight beyond comprehension. She had sensed the pull, the connection, the danger, but hearing it articulated left her feeling exposed, raw, and strangely exhilarated. "What do you mean by, to you?" she asked cautiously. Damon's eyes softened slightly, but the intensity remained. "You're attuned to me in ways you can't fully explain yet. It's why your senses are heightened, why you feel alive in my presence. And it's why I need to show you what this world is. You're not just human, Maya. Not entirely. There's a thread running through you that ties you to my world, to the pack, to powers you've never tapped." The air seemed charged, vibrating with unspoken truths. Maya's instincts flared, her pulse racing. She could feel the faint brush of energy around Damon, like a low hum thrumming through the air, resonating in her chest, and stirring something she couldn't name. "You're serious," she whispered, her voice trembling, a mix of fear and intrigue. "Deadly serious," he replied. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, intricately carved token, a wolf's head entwined with a crescent moon. "This is part of our world. Symbols, rules, markings. There are forces beyond your comprehension, rival packs, supernatural politics, dangers that are real and immediate." Maya's fingers hovered above the token. Her instincts told her to step back, to question, to run. But another instinct, The one that had kept pulling her toward him since the rooftop urged her to take it. Slowly, deliberately, she touched the surface. The moment her skin made contact, a subtle warmth pulsed through her, a connection, almost magnetic, that left her momentarily breathless. "You feel that?" Damon asked, watching her closely. I do," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "That's the beginning," he said, his gaze locking with hers. "You're part of something larger now, something dangerous, but also something powerful. And I will help you, if you allow me." Her mind whirled with questions, doubts, and fear. But beneath it all, a thrill surged, fear and desire mingling in ways she had never experienced. Before she could respond, the door creaked. Both froze. Victoria's shadow appeared just outside the glass panel, watching. Damon's eyes darkened. She doesn't belong here. Maya's pulse quickened. Victoria's presence was a reminder that her human life, with all its challenges and humiliations, still existed. But now, that life seemed small, insignificant compared to the awakening she had begun, the pull toward Damon, and the glimpse into a world she hadn't known existed. Victoria's face twisted in a brief expression of suspicion before she moved on, disappearing down the corridor. Maya exhaled shakily, relief washing over her, but Damon's storm-gray eyes stayed fixed on her. "This isn't just about survival," he said softly, stepping closer. "It's about understanding who you are, and who you could become." Maya's chest tightened, a mixture of anticipation and fear. "And if I fail?" "You won't," he replied firmly, the weight of his certainty grounding her. "But you must choose. Embrace what's stirring inside you, or continue living unaware, vulnerable, and at the mercy of forces beyond your comprehension." The room seemed to contract around them, the city lights dimming against the intensity of the moment. Maya felt the primal pull of instincts she couldn't yet name, the magnetic attraction, the awareness that her life had irrevocably changed.
The dim light of the private conference room flickered as Damon closed the door behind them. Maya's senses still thrummed with residual energy from their rooftop encounter and the after-hours invitation. Every instinct screamed that this was no ordinary meeting, no ordinary man. Damon moved with deliberate purpose, his presence filling the space, commanding attention even without words. Maya's pulse quickened, not entirely from fear, but from a magnetism she could no longer ignore. "Sit," he said finally, gesturing to the leather chair across from his own. The words were simple, yet carried authority, like a law that existed beyond office hierarchy. Maya obeyed, perching at the edge of the chair as if bracing herself for what was coming. "You've sensed things," Damon began, his storm-gray eyes locked on hers. "The heightened awareness, the pull, the instincts you can't explain. All of it is real. You're not imagining it." Maya swallowed hard, her hands gripping the chair arms. "But what am I? And what are you? You're not human." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Damon's lips. "Correct. I am alpha of my pack, and you may be something far more rare than you realize." The words hit her like a physical blow. Alpha, pack, rare. She tried to absorb the meaning, but her rational mind faltered under the weight of her awakening instincts. Her chest tightened, and a shiver ran down her spine. "You're telling me I'm destined to be part of this world?" she whispered, voice trembling. Damon leaned forward, hands resting on the table, and his eyes softened with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "I'm saying that whatever this connection between us is, it's not accidental. There's a bond forming, Maya, a primal link that will shape both your life and mine, and if you're willing, I will guide you through it." Maya's pulse raced, a mix of fear, anticipation, and something darker stirring within her. Her heightened senses picked up every nuance, the faint brush of his sleeve, the subtle shift of his weight, the almost imperceptible scent that clung to him. Earthy, musky, undeniably alive. "And if I refuse?" she asked, though part of her knew she couldn't. "Then you risk everything," Damon said simply. "Not just the bond, your life, your safety, your very sense of self. But I don't think you'll refuse. You're stronger than most, and you already feel it. This pull. Don't fight it." Maya's mind raced. Strength, pull, bond. These were not corporate metaphors. These were instincts, sensations she couldn't ignore. Her body ached with awareness she had never known, every nerve attuned to Damon's presence, every breath synced with his. He stepped closer, his movement fluid, predatory, yet controlled. "There's much you need to learn," he said quietly. "Rules, boundaries, rivals, threats you haven't even imagined. And I want you safe, prepared. That's why I asked you here, after hours, away from prying eyes." Maya's gaze followed him, her heart pounding. The room felt smaller, tighter, charged with an energy she couldn't name. She was drawn to him, yet wary, aware that this was a line she hadn't crossed before, and once crossed, there would be no turning back. Damon's hand brushed against hers as he placed the wolf token from the previous night on the table. The contact sent a spark through her, and instinctively, her senses flared. She could feel the pulse of power emanating from him, the subtle vibration of alpha dominance, the hint of something unearthly threading through her own veins. "You feel it, don't you?" he murmured, his eyes locking with hers. "Yes," Maya whispered, almost breathless. "Everything. I feel everything, and I don't know how to control it." "You will," Damon said. His voice was firm, grounding, yet threaded with warmth. "I'll train you, help you understand your abilities, teach you to harness what's inside, but first, you need to acknowledge it, accept it." Maya's instincts screamed approval and fear in equal measure. Her body responded before her mind could process, drawn closer to him, craving the connection, the guidance, the intensity. Every fiber of her being resonated with the promise of something beyond human comprehension. And then, the room was shattered by a sharp noise, a muffled growl from the corridor, low and deliberate. Maya flinched, her instincts flaring violently. Damon's head snapped toward the door, eyes narrowing, muscles tensing. "Not here," he whispered, moving in front of her protectively. His presence was a shield, unyielding and commanding. "Whatever it is, it's testing us." Maya's breath caught. The danger was tangible, close. Her senses, sharpened and raw, screamed at her. The world felt impossibly alive. The metallic tang of the air, the vibration of the building, the faint scent of something predatory lurking outside the door. Damon's gaze returned to hers, a silent command threading through the tension. "You're ready to see more than you've ever imagined," he said, his voice low, intimate. "But not yet. Not until you accept this bond, fully and willingly." Her chest tightened, heart hammering in rhythm with the pulsing tension in the room. She wanted to step forward, to close the distance, to surrender to the pull that had been building since the rooftop, since the first merger meeting, since the first moment she had felt something primal in Damon's presence. But before she could move, a shadow passed under the door, a warning, deliberate, unmistakable. The growl returned, louder this time, resonating in her chest like a drum. Whatever waited outside was testing her, testing them both. Damon's hand lightly touched her shoulder. "This is only the beginning," he said, his gaze dark, stormy, and full of unspoken promise. "And you have a choice. Trust me and embrace what you are, or risk everything. But know this, there's no going back once the bond forms." Maya's instincts flared again, primal and urgent. The pull was undeniable, magnetic, overwhelming. She felt alive in a way she had never known, terrified, exhilarated, and inexplicably drawn to the man before her.
The following morning, Crescent Industries buzzed with the usual energy of deadlines and hushed whispers. But for Maya, the office seemed muted, almost secondary, as the events of the previous night lingered in her mind. Damon's revelations, the token, and the growl outside the conference room had left her senses heightened, her instincts alert to even the faintest shift in energy around her. Victoria Kane's sharp eyes immediately zeroed in on her the moment she entered the office. "Chen," she snapped, voice slicing through the air. "I expect the final revisions on the merger reports by noon. And do not disappoint." Maya's jaw tightened. Victoria had always thrived on intimidation, but now, with a world of power stirring within her, those threats felt different. She was aware, subtly, that she could no longer be the timid target of ridicule. Still, caution ruled her actions. She could not yet confront Victoria directly. The morning was a blur of calculations, edits, and tense meetings. Yet every time Maya felt trapped under Victoria's gaze, her senses pulsed with reminders of Damon's words: strength, instincts, awareness. The world outside human perception was waiting, and she was slowly, inexorably being pulled into it. Her lunch break offered little reprieve. Damon's text arrived, simple and precise. "Meet me in the rooftop garden at 6 p.m. Training begins. D." Her chest tightened. Training, powers, pack. Each word carried weight, and she felt the magnetic pull again, like gravity toward a force she couldn't resist. She glanced at the office clock, then at Victoria's polished heels clicking down the corridor, and knew she had to escape before more manipulation ensued. By evening, the office had emptied. Maya ascended to the rooftop, the city sprawling beneath her, lights twinkling like a sea of stars. Damon waited, leaning casually against the railing, his storm-gray eyes scanning her approach. "You're late," he said, though the faint amusement in his tone did little to mask the commanding edge of authority. "I had to survive Victoria," Maya replied, voice tight but steady. He tilted his head, a smirk tugging at his lips. "That's part of the test, too. Survival isn't just about avoiding human threats. You'll learn quickly that our world is far less forgiving." Maya's pulse quickened. She had seen glimpses, felt instincts, and sensed powers she couldn't yet define. But standing here, under the open sky with Damon's presence enveloping her, she felt both exposed and alive. "First lesson," Damon said, stepping closer. His hand moved deliberately, tracing an invisible line in the air near hers. "Awareness. Every sensation you have, sight, sound, smell, touch, it's amplified. You can detect movements, intentions, even emotions. But you must learn control. Too much, and it overwhelms you. Too little, and you remain vulnerable." Maya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "How do I control it?" "Focus," he said. "Breathe. Ground yourself. Your instincts are a tool, not a master. Let me guide you." The training began with simple exercises, tracking objects across the rooftop, listening for subtle city sounds, feeling the energy in the air. At first, Maya stumbled, overwhelmed by the intensity, her senses screaming contradictions. But Damon's presence was steady, grounding, a tether in the chaos. His hand brushing against hers during corrections sent sparks through her that had nothing to do with the exercises themselves. Hours passed in a blur of instruction, instinct, and growing awareness. Maya's abilities, heightened perception, subtle strength, reflexes, slowly began to respond, her confidence rising with each small success. But even as she focused, danger lingered. Damon had been clear. Rival packs, supernatural politics, and unseen threats were watching, waiting for weakness. And Maya was not yet fully ready. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Damon's eyes darkened. "You've done well," he said, voice low, almost intimate. "But the world outside this rooftop is dangerous. There are those who will test your limits, and some will not hesitate to strike." Maya shivered, simultaneously thrilled and terrified. I thought I was just human." "You were," he corrected gently, "but you're changing, and change attracts attention, sometimes the wrong kind." Her gaze dropped to the rooftop floor, awareness flaring as she smelled something unusual. A faint, musky odor, not human, not city. Her body reacted before her mind could process, senses screaming a warning. Damon stiffened, hand moving to the small of her back. Someone's here. From the shadows near the stairwell, a figure stepped forward. Tall, lean, eyes glinting with predatory amusement. Victoria's tactics were petty, but this was different. This was an intruder who moved with supernatural grace. Maya recognized instinctively that this wasn't human. Damon's posture shifted, alpha dominance radiating from him in waves. "You shouldn't have come," he growled, low and controlled. The figure smiled, revealing a hint of sharp teeth in the dim light. I couldn't resist seeing if the new initiate was as promising as rumored. Maya's heart pounded, but she didn't retreat. Something inside her, a flicker of strength, of raw potential, rose to meet the threat. Damon's presence bolstered her, the bond between them subtly resonating in her chest. "Stay close," he murmured, eyes locked on hers. "Trust what you've learned. Trust me." The figure advanced, and in a blur of motion, Damon intercepted with supernatural speed. Maya's instincts flared. She felt the rhythm of movement, the energy of predator and prey, the pulse of raw power. Her body reacted before she could think, ducking, sidestepping, and catching a glimpse of her own fledgling reflexes in action. The rooftop became a blur of motion and tension. Damon moved with precision, controlling the confrontation, while Maya's awareness sharpened. She felt every heartbeat, every subtle shift, every flicker of intent. And for the first time, she realized just how much power and potential she held within herself. Finally, the figure retreated into the shadows, a low, warning growl echoing as it disappeared. Damon turned to Maya, his storm-gray eyes intense, and she felt the bond between them thrum, stronger, undeniable, and primal. "You're ready," he said quietly, voice low, intimate. "But this is only the beginning. Rivals will test you, Victoria will escalate, and the pack will watch. Are you prepared to embrace what's coming?" Maya inhaled deeply, chest tight with anticipation, fear, and excitement. "I am," she whispered. Damon's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "Good. Then there's no turning back."
The morning air was crisp, carrying with it a faint scent of pine from the park bordering Crescent Industries' skyscraper. Maya walked briskly, her mind still buzzing from the rooftop training the previous night. Her senses remained heightened, each sound, smell, and movement sharper than the day before. Damon's presence lingered in her thoughts, magnetic and inescapable, a constant thread weaving through her waking consciousness. Yet the office was unchanged. Victoria Kane's domain remained a battlefield of politeness and thinly veiled hostility. From the moment Maya arrived, her boss's sharp gaze cut through her like a blade. "Chen," Victoria said sweetly, a venomous undertone beneath the sugar, "I trust you've finalized the revised reports. The Blackthorne delegation is expecting perfection." Maya's pulse quickened. She had double-checked every number, reviewed every slide. But with Victoria, perfection was never enough. Her instincts, sharpened by Damon's training, whispered that something beyond spreadsheets and projections was afoot. Danger, lurking, waiting. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and tense exchanges, each interaction layered with Victoria's subtle manipulations. She attempted to undermine Maya at every turn, inserting misleading data, questioning minor assumptions, and planting doubts in the minds of senior colleagues. Yet Maya noticed, analyzed, and subtly countered, her awareness now attuned not just to the office politics, but to subtle energy shifts, gestures, posture, even the faint scent of deception. By lunchtime, Maya retreated to her desk, craving a moment of solitude, but a shadow fell across her workstation, and she looked up to find Damon leaning casually against the partition, eyes scanning her with that same piercing intensity. "You're improving faster than I anticipated," he said quietly, voice carrying both approval and something more, something personal, intimate. Maya felt warmth rise in her chest. "Thanks. I think I'm starting to understand." Damon's gaze softened, yet remained commanding. "Understanding isn't enough. You'll need control, discipline, and trust, especially as the threats escalate. There are those in rival packs who already know of your awakening. They'll test you, and they won't hesitate." Maya's stomach tightened. "Rival packs? Already?" "Yes," Damon replied simply, "and Victoria's interference is only complicating matters. Her human schemes may be trivial in the supernatural scale, but they can make you vulnerable. You need to be ready for both worlds." The afternoon passed with subtle glances and unspoken communication between them. Every interaction carried weight, every touch, brief, incidental, igniting sparks in Maya she couldn't suppress. By the time the workday ended, the office felt both familiar and alien, a human stage for a drama far larger than spreadsheets or meetings. Later, Damon led Maya to a secluded training ground in the park behind the city, a dense grove of trees hidden from view, where shadows twisted and the air thrummed with primal energy. The transition from concrete and fluorescent lights to the open, untamed world felt intoxicating. Maya's senses flared as she stepped into the grove, the faint scent of earth, leaves, and something darker, danger, filling her nostrils. "Today," Damon said, stepping close, "we'll go beyond awareness and reflex. You'll begin to harness instincts, movement, speed, even strength. But more importantly, you'll learn to trust the bond forming between us." Maya's pulse raced. The bond. It wasn't just attraction. It was a thread pulling at her very essence, stirring something ancient, undeniable. The training began with simple sparring exercises. Damon moved with impossible speed, precise and fluid, testing her reflexes, timing, and focus. Maya stumbled at first, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of sensory information, but with each passing moment she adapted. Her instincts sharpened, movements became instinctive, her confidence blossomed. At one point, Damon's hand brushed hers during a correction. The contact sent a surge through her, electrical, magnetic, intimate. She realized how deeply she craved his guidance, his presence, his approval, and in that instant she understood. The attraction between them was not merely physical, it was primal, destined, and irrepressible. But even as her connection with Damon deepened, a warning stirred in her mind, a scent, faint but distinct, infiltrating her awareness. Someone watched, someone close enough to observe, yet careful to remain hidden. Damon noticed her shift immediately. "You sense them?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "Yes," she whispered. "Someone's here, near the perimeter." His eyes darkened, storm-gray intensity sharpening. "They're testing you, a rival pack, but more than that." His gaze softened slightly as he focused on her. "I need you to remain calm. Trust in what you've learned. Trust me." Before Maya could respond, a figure stepped from the shadows, tall, lean, with eyes glinting in the dim light. Maya's instincts flared violently. This was no casual observer. This was an intruder, assessing, calculating, predatory. Damon moved between her and the figure, body tense, alpha presence radiating authority. "I told you not to come here," he growled. The figure smirked, revealing a hint of sharp teeth. "Curiosity, Damon, and the new initiate. I had to see for myself if the rumors were true." Maya's heart hammered, but something inside her shifted. Fear flared, yes, but alongside it, a growing sense of power, awareness, and confidence. She could feel the energy in the intruder, sense every shift in stance, every breath. Her training, her instincts, her bond with Damon, they all aligned. Damon's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, grounding her. "You're ready," he murmured, "but remain alert. They will test us again." The figure retreated with a low growl, eyes lingering on Maya. Damon's storm-gray gaze followed them, sharp and unyielding. Maya exhaled, her body buzzing with adrenaline, excitement, and a dawning realization. She wasn't merely a participant in this world. She was awakening into something far greater, far more dangerous, and far more exhilarating than she had ever imagined.
Maya woke to the city's early hum, the faint light of dawn filtering through her curtains. Her body ached, not from exertion, but from the lingering surge of energy that had settled in her muscles overnight. The training, the rooftop confrontation, the mysterious message, they had all left their mark. Something had shifted within her, and she could feel it. Raw strength, heightened senses, and a pulse of energy that made her skin tingle. Even as she dressed for work, her mind was alert, her instincts sharper than ever. She caught the faintest scent of coffee brewing from a floor below, the subtle vibration of footsteps in the corridor, and a distant murmur of conversation from the street outside. Every sense felt amplified, and yet every movement, every thought was under her control. She was awake in a way she had never been before. The office, however, remained the same battlefield. Victoria Kane's sharp gaze found her immediately, the perfect smile masking the venom beneath. "Chen," Victoria said sweetly, "I hope you slept well. We have a critical presentation today, and I expect nothing less than perfection." Maya met her boss's gaze, feeling the difference in herself. The usual fear that knotted her stomach was replaced by something else. Confidence, awareness, an unshakable sense of self. "Of course, Director Kane," she replied evenly. The morning meetings were a blur of tense conversations, minor sabotage, and subtle digs from Victoria, but Maya responded with precision and calm. Her senses allowed her to anticipate interruptions, read intentions, and navigate Victoria's schemes with ease. Every glance, every gesture from her colleagues, and every hidden smirk was noticed, catalogued, and countered. She was no longer merely surviving, she was thriving. By mid-afternoon, a crisis erupted. A technical glitch in the presentation software threatened to derail the merger discussion with Blackthorne Enterprises. The room descended into chaos as senior executives scrambled to troubleshoot, their polished exteriors cracking under pressure. Damon arrived moments later, slipping into the room like a shadow. Maya felt his presence immediately, a pulse of magnetic energy that sharpened her awareness and focused her instincts. Without a word, he moved beside her, scanning the room, analyzing the disruption. "Trust your instincts," he murmured, voice low, almost intimate. "You know what to do." Maya's pulse quickened and she took control. Guided by intuition and the skills Damon had helped her hone, she navigated the software glitch, corrected errors in real time, and presented the necessary adjustments to the board with precision. Whispers of approval rippled through the room, and even Victoria's lips twitched, not in triumph, but in irritation at being outmaneuvered. After the boardroom drama settled, Damon led Maya to a quiet stairwell, away from prying eyes. The air was thick with anticipation, tension, and unspoken connection. "You've awakened faster than I expected," Damon said, storm-gray eyes darkening with intensity. "Your instincts, your strength. It's impressive, but there's more. There's a depth of power you haven't even touched yet. Tonight I want to guide you deeper." Maya's heart pounded. "Deeper?" she whispered, both nervous and exhilarated. He stepped closer, the magnetic pull between them impossible to ignore. "Yes. Tonight, under the moon, you'll experience the full awakening of your abilities. But be warned, once you embrace it, there's no going back." The evening came swiftly, the city lights painting the skyline in gold and crimson. Damon led her to a secluded clearing on the outskirts of the city, a place alive with the pulse of nature, untamed and primal. The moon rose high, casting silver light that danced across the leaves, illuminating the space with a mystical glow. "Focus," Damon instructed, his voice a low rumble. Feel the energy around you. Let it flow through your body. Don't resist. Trust yourself. Maya closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, allowing the moonlight to seep into her skin, into her very being. She felt the latent power within her stir, responding to the rhythm of the earth, the pull of the moon, and the presence of Damon beside her. Suddenly, the world sharpened. Sounds she had never noticed became clear. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of a nocturnal bird, the subtle shift of Damon's breath beside her. Her skin tingled, her muscles hummed with energy, and her instincts flared. Damon moved closer, guiding her through each sensation. "Do not fight it," he said. "Let your body respond. Let your senses guide you. You are more than you realized. More than human. And this is only the beginning." Maya's eyes snapped open, glowing faintly under the moonlight. She could see the subtle aura of energy around Damon, the rhythm of his heartbeat, the latent strength coiled in his muscles. And then she noticed it. Something she hadn't before. The presence of danger lurking beyond the clearing, shadows moving with intent. Her instincts surged. She reacted before thought, every movement precise, every sense aligned. Damon's hand rested on her back, grounding her, amplifying her focus. Together, they detected the approaching threat, a rival pack alpha, testing her newly awakened abilities, gauging her readiness. The encounter was swift and controlled. Maya's senses guided her actions. Damon's presence fortified her. The rival pack retreated, leaving behind a warning growl that echoed through the clearing. Maya's chest heaved with adrenaline, exhilaration, and the undeniable thrill of power finally embraced. Damon stepped closer, eyes intense, storm-gray orbs reflecting the moonlight. "You did well," he said, voice low, intimate. "More than well. You are ready. But remember, the world outside this clearing is just as dangerous, and your bond with me, it will be your anchor, your strength, and your vulnerability." Maya's chest tightened. She had felt the connection before, subtle and magnetic, but now it pulsed with undeniable intensity. I feel it," she whispered, voice trembling with awe and anticipation. Damon's hand brushed hers, deliberate, electric. "Good," he murmured, "because there's no turning back. Once fully awakened, your life will be changed forever."
The morning sun reflected harshly off the glass facade of Crescent Industries, mirroring the tension that pulsed through Maya as she entered the building. Even after her awakening, navigating the office felt like walking a tightrope. Victoria Kane's presence was more calculated than ever, her subtle manipulations and cruel smirks sharper now that Maya had grown in confidence. Maya's instincts were on high alert, sensing every intention, every flicker of deceit. Yet nothing could fully prepare her for what awaited in the boardroom that morning. The Blackthorne delegation had returned, this time with a proposal that carried enormous stakes, and the unmistakable undertone of a hidden agenda. Victoria's opening remarks were sugary, but Maya saw through them immediately. She noticed the careful positioning of slides, the strategic phrasing meant to mislead both the Blackthorne team and the board. Normally, Maya would have hesitated under such scrutiny, second-guessing herself, but now she moved with precision, correcting discrepancies in real time, predicting potential questions, and countering Victoria's subtle sabotage with quiet authority. Her heightened senses allowed her to notice what no one else did. Damon's presence lingering near the edge of the room, unseen but palpable. His watchful eyes ensured she had the support she didn't need to articulate. He was her anchor, her unseen shield. "Ms. Chen," Damon said quietly from across the table, "focus on the methodology behind the projections. Ignore the distractions." Maya exhaled slowly, letting his guidance flow through her. She spoke with newfound clarity and confidence, explaining complex models and risk assessments in a manner that left the board quietly impressed. Even Victoria's lips twitched in irritation, as her own manipulative tactics failed to sway perception. The meeting progressed into tense silence, the Blackthorne delegation scrutinizing every figure, every explanation. Maya's body thrummed with the power she now controlled, the supernatural awareness, her instincts, her bond with Damon. Every movement, every word, every subtle glance was informed by the awakening within her. But corporate challenges weren't the only threats awaiting her. A sudden commotion erupted at the end of the boardroom. A rival pack alpha, bold enough to intrude within human walls, had arrived. Damon tensed immediately, his posture protective, alpha energy radiating in a low, commanding hum that Maya could feel vibrating through her very core. "Stay behind me," he whispered, voice low and intimate, a stark contrast to the roar of authority he exuded moments ago. Maya didn't hesitate. Her instincts flared, senses sharpened, muscles coiled, reflexes primed. The rival alpha moved with predatory precision, eyes flicking to Damon, then assessing Maya. There was an unspoken test in their gaze, an evaluation of her newly awakened abilities. Before the intruder could act, Maya moved. She sidestepped, countered, and positioned herself between Damon and the threat, responding with agility and strength she didn't know she possessed hours ago. Her instincts guided her, Damon's bond amplifying her control. Together they were a force, human and supernatural united, commanding, unrelenting. The rival alpha hesitated, recognizing the strength of their bond, the precision of their movements, and the raw power emanating from Maya. With a low growl he retreated, but not without a warning, sharp and foreboding. "This isn't over. Your awakening has consequences you cannot yet comprehend." The boardroom, which had frozen in a mix of confusion and fear, slowly returned to professional decorum. Maya's pulse raced, her senses still tingling from the confrontation. Victoria, who had been observing silently, looked momentarily rattled. A flicker of fear she quickly masked with composure. Damon stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers in a grounding touch. "You handled that perfectly," he murmured. "You're ready for what comes next, but the threats will only grow stronger. And Victoria..." His gaze darkened, storm-gray eyes narrowing. "Her schemes are far from over." The remainder of the day passed in a blur of heightened tension. Maya managed the delicate balance of human politics and supernatural awareness with newfound skill. She could anticipate Victoria's traps, deflecting subtle manipulations while simultaneously ensuring the Blackthorne delegation remained impressed and engaged. By evening, Damon led her to a secluded terrace overlooking the city skyline. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of amber and violet. For a moment, the weight of the corporate battles and supernatural confrontations lifted, leaving only the pulse of electricity between them. "You've changed," Damon said softly, eyes fixed on hers, "not just in strength, but in presence. Confidence isn't something you wore, it's something you became." Maya's chest tightened, the tension between them raw and unfiltered. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Damon's gaze softened, but the storm within remained. He took her hand, fingers intertwining. "No. You did this. I guided you, yes, but the strength, the awakening, it was always inside you. Their proximity, the bond pulsating between them, was undeniable." Maya felt the pull of something primal, irresistible. She could sense the rhythm of Damon's heartbeat, the subtle energy of his presence, the magnetic force of his alpha aura drawing her closer. Before she could process the intensity, a new alert pinged on her phone, a message from the unknown number that had warned her days before. "The balance is shifting. Your awakening threatens more than you realize. Prepare." Maya's breath caught. She looked at Damon, who had already read the message over her shoulder. His expression hardened, tension returning. "They know," he said simply, "and this is only the beginning." Maya felt a surge of determination. The corporate battles, the supernatural threats, the magnetic, undeniable pull of Damon, Everything converged into a single truth. She was no longer a passive player. She was a force to be reckoned with, human and supernatural combined. And together, they would face whatever came next.
The boardroom at Crescent Industries was unusually tense that morning. The final merger presentation had become more than a professional milestone. It was a test of Maya's growth, a stage for her to demonstrate mastery over both the corporate battlefield and the supernatural forces that now defined her life. Maya entered with measured confidence, the air around her charged with the subtle hum of her awakening powers. Victoria Kane sat at the head of the table, her sharp eyes narrowing, lips pressed into a perfect, calculated smile. She was poised to manipulate, to undermine, but Maya had learned to anticipate, to read, and to counter. The Blackthorne delegation had arrived early, their presence commanding attention. Damon stood slightly behind Maya, his alpha aura a quiet, grounding force. She could feel his energy, the invisible tether that amplified her instincts, guided her focus, and steadied her resolve. "Ms. Chen," Victoria began, voice honeyed but tense, "we expect a flawless presentation today. After all, the stakes have never been higher." Maya's lips curved into a confident smile. "Of course, Director Kane. I'll walk you through every detail." As the slides advanced, Maya guided the room through complex financial models, strategic projections, and risk analyses with effortless authority. Every potential question, every subtle probe from Victoria, she met with calm precision. Her senses picked up nuances no one else noticed, the tiniest hesitation in a board member's expression, a whispered murmur from the Blackthorne team, the micro-gestures of confidence or doubt. By mid-presentation, it was evident. Maya's mastery of the material was unmatched. Even Victoria's carefully laid traps began to unravel, falling flat against the strength of Maya's clarity and command. Damon's occasional nods, subtle but affirming, bolstered her focus. The energy between them was palpable, unspoken, yet undeniable. When the final slide advanced, silence filled the room. Then came the soft clapping, Damon's applause, quiet but resonant, a private acknowledgement of her triumph. The Blackthorne team exchanged impressed glances, murmurs of approval echoing in the polished boardroom. Even Victoria, though masking it behind a tight-lipped expression, seemed momentarily disarmed. "Remarkable work, Ms. Chen," CEO Robert Silverman finally said, his voice carrying genuine admiration. "These projections are comprehensive, clear, and accurate. I see no reason why this merger shouldn't proceed seamlessly." Maya allowed herself a quiet breath of relief, her pulse still racing, the adrenaline mingling with the warmth of victory and something deeper. A recognition, a connection, a bond with Damon that had grown stronger with every trial they had faced together. As the meeting concluded, Damon stepped forward, his hand brushing hers in a deliberate, grounding gesture. "You've done more than impress them," he murmured, voice low and intimate. "You've proven yourself. And in doing so, you've proven yourself to me as well." Maya's chest tightened. She had felt the attraction, the pull, the undeniable connection, but hearing it spoken aloud by Damon, the alpha who had guided her, protected her, and awakened her powers, sent a thrill through her entire being. "Damon," she began, voice trembling slightly, unsure if words could capture the intensity of her emotions. He closed the distance, storm-gray eyes locking with hers. "Maya," he said, voice steady yet magnetic. "What we share, it's more than attraction. It's bond, connection, destiny. I feel it, and I know you do too." Maya's heartbeat quickened, instincts flaring, senses sharpening. She could feel it, the pull of the mate bond, the energy that surged between them, undeniable and primal. I feel it," she whispered, voice barely audible over the rush of adrenaline and longing. Damon's hand lifted, gently cupping her cheek. "Then accept it," he murmured. "Accept me." Accept what we are together. The bond is ours, and it will strengthen us, professionally, personally, and in every way that matters. Her lips parted, her body tense with anticipation. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the pull of the connection, the thrum of shared energy, the undeniable truth that they were meant to face everything together. Before she could respond further, a subtle shift in the air made her senses flare. Outside the boardroom window, a shadow moved, fleeting but unmistakable, a reminder that the supernatural threats were far from gone. But this time, Maya didn't feel fear. She felt power, control, and partnership. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Damon at her side, and together they could face anything. Damon leaned closer, voice a soft rumble. No more hiding, no more fear. This is our moment, Maya. Together. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed them over his, sealing the connection. Together, she echoed. And in that word, in that moment, something profound shifted. The invisible threads that had bound them, the latent energy within her, and the primal force of their bond crystallized into something tangible, undeniable, and eternal. The room seemed to hold its breath as the mate bond took root, subtle waves of energy intertwining their beings. Damon's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability touching his otherwise commanding presence. "You're extraordinary," he said, voice thick with emotion. "And I know," Maya interrupted softly, smiling despite the racing of her heart. "I feel it too." The final barriers fell, and with the mate bond sealed, their partnership, both romantic and supernatural, was complete. The corporate victory, once the pinnacle of Maya's challenges, now felt secondary to the awakening of her true self and the power of the connection she shared with Damon.
The city skyline glowed with the first rays of dawn, painting Crescent Industries' towering glass panels in shades of gold. Inside, the air still carried the charged energy of last night's triumph, Maya's flawless presentation, the board's approval, and the bond she had accepted with Damon. Yet as Maya stood by her office window, coffee in hand, she realized this was more than a new workday. It was the beginning of a new life. Her reflection stared back at her. The same woman who had once been overlooked, dismissed, humiliated in front of colleagues. But something was different now. Her gaze was sharper, steadier. Her aura carried quiet strength. She was no longer just an analyst working late hours to prove her worth. She was Maya Chen, victorious, empowered, and bound to an alpha. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. The door opened, and Damon stepped in, his presence filling the small office effortlessly. No tailored suit could hide the aura of dominance he carried, but this morning there was a softness in his eyes reserved only for her. "You didn't sleep," he observed, his voice low and knowing. Maya smiled faintly. "Neither did you." "True," he admitted, stepping closer, "but I had good reason." He reached for her hand, his touch warm, grounding, electric with the echo of their bond. "I've never felt this before, Maya. The bond. It changes everything." She tightened her fingers around his. "It does, but it also makes everything clearer. I finally know who I am, Damon, what I'm meant for." "And what is that?" he asked, testing, though his expression softened as though he already knew her answer. She drew a steady breath. "I'm meant to stand at your side. Not behind you, not beneath you, but beside you. In this world," she gestured toward the corporate skyline, "and in yours." The way Damon looked at her then was more than admiration. It was respect, reverence, devotion. "Then it seems the bond has given me more than I deserve," he said softly. Before she could respond, the sharp click of heels echoed down the hallway. Victoria Kane swept into the office without knocking, her smile brittle, eyes flashing with false confidence. "Maya," she said, voice sweetened with venom, "congratulations on your little presentation. I must admit, I underestimated you. Maya held Damon's hand tighter, but her own expression was calm, composed. Not little, Victoria. Transformative. You tried to bury me, but I grew stronger. That's what you underestimated. For the first time, Victoria faltered. Her jaw tightened, and her gaze flickered briefly toward Damon, who stood silently, watching with quiet intensity. I won't forget this, Victoria hissed finally, her composure cracking as she turned on her heel and stormed out. Maya exhaled slowly, her shoulders easing. She won't stop, will she? Not easily, Damon said, but she's already lost. She knows it. Maya's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. Good. Because I'm done being afraid of her. Damon drew her into his arms then, the embrace both tender and protective. That's my mate, he murmured, voice rumbling against her ear. The word, mate, sent a shiver through her. It wasn't just a title, it was a truth, binding and eternal. Hours later, as the official merger documents were signed and handshakes sealed the deal, Maya stood confidently among the executives, no longer overlooked but acknowledged as the driving force behind the company's victory. She felt Damon's presence at her side, not overshadowing her, but amplifying her strength. The board members spoke to her directly now, their respect genuine. Even the once dismissive murmurs of colleagues had shifted to admiration. By evening, as the city lights shimmered below, Damon led Maya to the rooftop terrace of Crescent Industries. The air was crisp, the moon rising pale against the darkening sky. This view, Maya whispered, gazing at the horizon, feels different now. That's because you're seeing it with new eyes, Damon said, stepping behind her, his arms circling her waist. You've awakened. You've embraced your place, your power, your bond. She leaned back against him, her heart full. It feels like the end of one story, and the beginning of another. Damon pressed a kiss to her hair, his voice deep and certain. It is. A new dawn, Maya, for both of us. As the moonlight bathed them, Maya felt the strength of their connection thrumming through her veins. The city below might never know the supernatural currents that shaped its destiny, but she did. She was part of it now, part of something larger, deeper, and infinitely more dangerous. Yet instead of fear, she felt exhilaration. For the first time in her life, she wasn't surviving. She was thriving. And as Damon held her close beneath the rising moon, Maya knew one thing with certainty. Whatever battles lay ahead, whether in boardrooms or under moonlight, they would face them together. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more Werewolf Shifter Romances audiobooks. Leave a comment below to share your favorite moment in the story. Thank you for listening, and see you on the next one.